For our next segment, I wanted to show you one of the burning questions that I encounter at home on a daily basis.
If I finish my chocolate, you can give me some more. If I eat all the chocolate, you can give me some more.
Is that a question?
Yeah.
That is my daughter Isa, angling to get more chocolate as she always does. And we try not to be too strict, especially my husband. He was one that got her that ice cream. But I worry, is there an okay amount of sugar? Am I overdoing it? What's the right thing to do? And it turns out there's a recent study that looked at the impact of sugar consumption on long-term health. It found that kids who were less exposed to sugar or restricted from the time they were in utero or in early childhood, they had a lower risk of type 2 diabetes and high blood pressure later in life. Economist and best-selling author Emily Oster has been digging into this research and joins us now. Good morning.
Morning.
So I saw you write about this because I follow you and receive your newsletter, which I read dutifully. And this really is like a source of anxiety for me because I want to give her sugar, but I also actually, I don't want to give her sugar. I want to indulge her, but I worry that restricting might make her want it more, but I don't want her to have, develop a taste for it. And that's what this study really looked at, right?
Yeah, so what this study does, so first of all, it's very hard to study sugar and any kind of diet consumption because the things that determine your diet, the characteristics that relate to your diet also relate to other things like how much you exercise and all kinds of other stuff. What's really interesting in this study is that they use a historical episode in England in the 1950s where sugar was restricted and then it got less restricted. So they are able to look at kind of external control on sugar, which is going to help us understand better the causality in the data. And what they find is that when kids are exposed to more sugar, they do have a higher risk of type 2 diabetes, of hypertension later in life. On the other hand, it's not that they're having no sugar before. They're going from 40 grams of sugar to 80 grams of sugar. I'm not sure how much that means to us, but it is some sugar to a lot of sugar. And so I think the lesson for parents in part is moderation, not zero.
Right.
Okay, moderation, not zero. I mean, Isa was asking nicely for more chocolate. It's usually like, it gets piercing in my household, right? And then you have to push them away from the fridge. No, you don't go in the fridge. And then they bring the stool over and they try to go in the cabinet, like you're at that age. So, I mean, how much no do you have to say? Do we have a sense of like what 40 grams is or 50 grams?
So I don't think telling people in grams, you could say, it's like 4 grams per teaspoon, but really we're talking here about added sugar and not about all sugar. So parents will ask questions like, what about fruit? Is fruit sugar? Yeah, fruit has sugar in it, but if your kid's eating an entire pint of blueberries, 2 pints of blueberries, they can't really eat too many blueberries.
We've convinced Eloise that dates are chocolate.
Oh, yeah. I did that with like a blueberry smoothie.
Yeah.
But what's interesting is that fruits like that, they have fiber in them. So when kids eat them, they're getting sugar, but they're also getting water and they're getting fiber. And when they're just getting added sugar, that's where we worry. So it's really about the added sugar, not about any sugar.
So the Sugar Association, which describes itself as the sugar industry's scientific voice on the matter, says that knowledge is power. And that there could be policy changes that could help here. So are there policy changes that could help?
I think one pretty clear one is restricting added sugar in school lunches. So a lot of kids eat a lot of their meals at school breakfast, school lunch. It's in groups that are eating on average more sugar than probably your kids are having. And there are currently no restrictions on added sugar in school lunches. But in 2027, there will be. I think that's an example of something where really that's a very good policy to think about.
So you've also looked into how best to introduce or try to encourage your kids to eat other foods, right? Because what we often do is like, okay, if you have a little bit of this Brussels sprout, you might be able to have some chocolate after dinner. And you say...
That's not, no. The best way to introduce foods to kids is in a kind of more neutral phase. So telling them if you eat the Brussels sprout, you get the ice cream, tells them Brussels sprouts are bad and ice cream is a fun reward, as opposed to try the Brussels sprout, you might like it, it's like a date. It's not that much like a date, but they're children. And so thinking a little bit about how we present the food, presenting it when they're hungry, giving them vegetables when they're hungry before dinner rather than after they've had pasta. That's an example of a way that we know data shows can make them eat more vegetables.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I need to stop negotiating.
Well, that's what we try to present in a neutral fashion, but then my mom comes along and is like, no ice cream unless you finish your, like, it's generational here.
It is very generational. The no ice cream until you've cleaned your plate is a very, 1980s.
Very 80s. And then we get into ridiculous scenarios where it's like, if you don't finish your pizza and french fries, there's no ice cream. And you're like, come on, this is a terrible diet. All right, Emily, thank you very much.
Thank
Appreciate it.
you.
Thank you.